Okay, response to S's video allegation that proposition is fabricated. I guess I owe you an apology. I mean, I am getting frustrated here, so I may have said things that I just said out of frustration. But as far as the grammar, yeah, I have no problem with you changing it. In your response to Life Equals Loss video, you rephrase it as, "It is not ethical to arbitrarily put others in harm's way. People who procreate put others in harm's way arbitrarily. Therefore, procreation is not ethical." Don't have a problem with that at all. That's fine. Okay, I'm just gonna play the video and respond. I don't think I'm being disingenuous. I'm just being a dick. I'm, out of frustration. So, anyhow. Well, those things, like I said, I said things out of frustration. Because some of the things you say make me think that you're biased in such a way that you're gonna try and find a proposition that will make my argument meaningless. I mean, you said things like we need to exist. I think I've asked you why we need to exist, and you've never explained why we need to exist. We don't need to exist. So you seem to have the natalism bias. That's why I'm getting frustrated with you continually. I mean, I've proposed different propositions. Why can't it just be, since it's an ethical argument, why can't you just say people can make choices? And I mean, in a certain sense, we're not making choices because your brain's doing all the work. Okay, it's a deterministic universe, cause and effect. Everything we do is being done by the brain. Some brains work better than others. It's nothing to brag about if your brain's working better than others, and that you can't really point your finger at someone and say, "Oh, well, they are doing something wrong. Their brain just isn't working right." So, yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that with your source, Merriam-Webster, there's a medical definition of procreation, and it's the act or process of procreating. I mean, you can't. I mean, the word procreation, you can't have procreation without some agents. So, I mean, I think that's kind of a minor quibble, but yeah, the way you restructured the argument is grammatically correct. It's better than the way I put it. It's whatever. I have in another video, I stated, just because one can choose to procreate doesn't necessarily mean they can choose not to procreate. And you're saying that they can choose not to procreate. Just because they can choose to procreate, it doesn't follow that they can choose not to. It's a deterministic universe. They may not be able to choose it. They may not be mentally able. As a matter of fact, able, having necessary power, skill, resources, or qualifications. I don't think anybody has the qualifications to procreate. So saying they're mentally able to procreate is like a contradiction in terms. That's what I'm trying to say. The proposition doesn't make sense. I have said that, but I said other things too. I've used Merriam-Webster's, where it says you don't consider fairness or necessity. I mean, just because you want to doesn't mean that you can choose, just because you want to, not to procreate. Right. And again, the thing about choice, can people choose not to procreate? It all depends on their circumstances. Maybe they can't make that choice. Right? Everybody's who they are based on the circumstances they were put in. If they're, unless they can have, it's a big distinction between choosing to procreate and choosing not to procreate. One requires you to do something at the expense of another, and the other one doesn't. There's no expense of somebody else. They're just completely. Why would somebody that would choose to procreate choose not to procreate? I mean, if they can't see the distinction between the two, and they're going to choose to procreate, like I said, I don't think they're mentally able. They don't have the qualifications. They're just going to arbitrarily choose to procreate. They're not mentally able. They shouldn't be procreating. But the choice they're making is being done arbitrarily. Okay? And they're choosing arbitrarily to put someone else in harm's way. Who would want to do that arbitrarily? Who would want to, just because they want to, put somebody else in harm's way? I would say they're not mentally able. You can say, you know, all people, and that includes, you know, the delusional. You're going to put the delusional in with the non-delusional and say they're all going to make choices based on the same criteria or something, just because they want to. Now, there's people out there that won't do that just because they want to. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I have no problem with choices, except for the matter it's not really us making the choices, it's our brain doing all the work. So it all depends on one's brain. Is one's brain up to the task? I mean, they may think they're up to the task, right? Their brain's telling them, yeah, you're up to the task, go ahead and procreate. But they're not up to the task, and they do it anyhow. And it's all just because they want to. There can be no other reason for procreation but what you want. Because that's all there is. Before you procreate, it's just you and your partner. And you can't group all people into one, saying, oh, they're all making the same. They're making the choices on the same grounds of arbitrary. I don't see, you know, making it seem like all people are going to choose arbitrarily. No, they're not. Some people are going to if they do careful thought into what they're doing, and some will just do things just because they want to. And if it only involves you and a consenting party, fine. But when you got a third party that cannot give consent or hasn't given consent, you haven't even considered. Like you got person A wants to put person B in harm's way, and person A is going to do it only because they want to, right? The first thing you should consider, if you're going to want to put someone in harm's way, is what does person B think about it? That should be at a minimum. What does person B think about it? And that turns it from. Well, it's not arbitrary. If you're consulting person B, you're not doing it arbitrarily. You're explaining it, but you're just asserting it. You're not really explaining how you got to that proposition that those that are mentally able to procreate, which is kind of an oxymoron, are mentally able not to procreate. You know, it's almost nonsensical. If you're mentally able, you got the qualification. Well, I mean, you can't have. Nobody's qualified to procreate. So I mean, to fabricate something just means you've constructed it, and you're saying you got it from the word arbitrary. And I've tried to respond to what you're saying. You know, just because one can choose to procreate doesn't necessarily mean they can choose not to procreate. I mean, what else can I say? I've also tried to make alternate. Instead of saying mentally able, just say possible. It's possible that people that choose to procreate can choose not to procreate. It's possible. But you don't want to use that. You want to stick with your proposition, which I don't think makes sense. I'm trying to show where you're wrong. I've tried to change the proposition to a possibility. I mean, how can you demonstrate that people that choose to procreate can choose not to procreate? I mean, it's almost the proposition you've constructed, yeah, can't be verified. So you've made a proposition that can't be verified, and you're saying I made that proposition when I didn't. Well, once again, I mean, I don't think your proposition is legit. And this thing about, I mean, it's an ethical argument, and you want to verify. What is it you said in a comment? You said there would be no way for us to check if every person really did stop procreating. I don't see why why we need to do that. Why do we need to check if every person really did stop procreating? All I'm saying is that those that do procreate are doing so just because they want to. And that's not good enough. That's either rational or not rational. I mean, I don't see why we have to poll the whole world to see if they've stopped procreating. Well, if it's not complete, then it's not a good proposition. It's incomplete. No, not without modification. The modification changes it completely. Your proposition is not correct. The proposition with modification is correct. Well, according, says you, I mean, they're doing something arbitrarily. They're procreating arbitrarily. Then, if they're going to choose not to procreate, they're going to do it other than arbitrarily, right? There's nothing in the proposition that says, in the argument that says the people that don't procreate are doing so arbitrarily. Only people that do procreate are doing it arbitrarily. So it stands to reason that those that choose not to procreate are not doing it arbitrarily. The word is arbitrarily, okay? So you're gonna like throw away it's like you're dismissing the word arbitrary and just reducing it to choice. But the choice is being done arbitrarily. So that's where I'm having a problem. You're saying people who can choose are mentally able to choose not to procreate, which is kind of ridiculous, are mentally able to not procreate. And you get, the word's arbitrarily. So you're saying that people that choose not to procreate are doing so arbitrarily. I'm not saying that. So I'm saying, where are you getting that? No, you haven't. I think I may have already explained that. You're saying person A, just because they want to, can put person B in harm's way. Only because they want to, they can put person B in harm's way. Number one thing, first of all, why would you want to put someone in harm's way? But if for whatever reason you need to put someone in harm's way, you should consult person B before you put them in harm's way. You shouldn't put person B in harm's way simply only because you want to. So you haven't blown it out of the water. You tried. The closest you've come is with the masochism thing. But even in that case, if person A wants to put person B
I did that a long time ago by
in harm's way, you need to ask person B. You need to consult person B. You can't do it only because you want to. And step one, consult person B. If you don't do that, and you're doing it only because you want to, you're doing it wrong. Like I said, I don't think you can. The closest you've come is with the masochism, but still, if person B is the masochist, you should consult person B before you put them in harm's way. Once you consult person B, you're no longer doing it arbitrarily. You're not doing it only because you want to. You're doing it because person B has consented. No, it's not an assumption. It's not. It's almost an axiom. You don't put person B in harm's way without consulting them. I've debated, but you just, I can say the same thing back at you. You just don't want to accept what I'm saying. You can't put person B in harm's way without consulting them. And once you consult them, you're no longer doing it only because you want to. Actually, it's the fourth point of contact, which is your ass, by the way. Yes, I was being a dick. I'm sorry once again. I'm not joking. I think people that procreate do have their head up their ass. Because they're only doing it because they want to. That's the only reason they can have to procreate, is because they want to. And that's not good enough. You've got your head up your ass if you're going to bring another being into this world simply because you want to. I mean, you know, yeah, I was being a dick. I mean, you could have looked it up. I mean, I'm trying to argue that people that procreate are wrong. And you haven't told me why it's right. I mean, if you can tell me why procreation is the right thing to do, you're not going to change my mind. You know, you're bringing someone into the world that's going to suffer and die just because you want to. Well, you know, I mean, get off your back. I mean, I'm not forcing you to debate, am I? And you made a video first to amend them, and I just thought I'd get into the mix here. So I guess I'll just again, the proposition you're stating just really doesn't make sense. Talking about you putting all people, the delusional and the non-delusional, in one bucket, and saying that those that are mentally able to procreate, and those, you know, there's only people that think they're mentally able to procreate. I mean, there's no reason to procreate. It's only a delusion in someone's head that they need to procreate. So, that's the problem I have with what you're proposing. No one's mentally able to procreate. Nobody has the qualifications to conduct a biological experiment at somebody else's expense. So, I guess that's good for now. Okay, one more thing I forgot to add. I was gonna change the wording of your proposition to those that are mentally able to own slaves are mentally able to not own slaves. And the reason I wanted to put it in those terms is, would that make sense to you? That those that are mentally able to own slaves, it's kind of the same sense. You know, procreation and owning slaves are wrong. So to say that somebody's mentally able to own slaves is kind of silly, right? In the same sense, it's silly to say someone's mentally able to procreate. Yeah, thanks.